when you think you're okay, a triggering event can occur and you find yourself right back in the middle of a panic attack or an unreasonably aggressive response to something relatively minor, or a series of unexplained and unrelenting nightmares. PTSD, a rewiring of my central nervous system, as my psychiatrist described it, contributed to a lot of these creases and wrinkles in my life. Other things, such as trust issues, body image issues, lost opportunities that I just didn't have the energy to pursue any longer, such as law school or graduate work, are also a part of my wrinkled life. I left my career because I could no longer cope with the stress and anxiety of traveling and being exposed to so many strangers on a daily basis in order to do my job. I stayed home for 10 years, where I felt safer. Finally, at the age of 42, I entered a teacher credentialing program and became an elementary school teacher. At least I wasn't afraid of children. I used all my energy to keep my dream of marriage and family strong, and I built the best second career I could for 21 years before retiring. But it shouldn't have been this hard. I shouldn't have had to make constant adaptations to compensate for the wrinkles and the creases on my life's page. My choices should not have been impacted by this devastating event in my life. It's taken all my energy to make this page function and achieve. Still, I've written a good life on it, a happy family on my page, and I've been married to a saint of a man here for 41 years as of yesterday. Through it all, he has supported me emotionally, physically, financially, and in every other imaginable way through our life together. Because that's what a real man does. Around 2012, nearing the end of my teaching career, I was suddenly contacted by Paul Holes, who was an investigator with Contra Costa County. This was when I learned about the murders that had been committed and their connection to the East Area rapist attacks. I had never heard from my local San Joaquin County law enforcement again at all since the week of the attack in 1978. It was a terrible shock, but I agreed to cooperate with him the best I could as he convinced me that the case was solvable. Previously ironed out wrinkles in my life resurfaced as I dredged back through my traumatic memories in an effort to help law enforcement find the perpetrator of these crimes. If Stockton law enforcement would do nothing with my case, maybe this guy from Contra Costa could. In my heart, I never could get over the feeling that my attacker was still living among us, enjoying his life scot-free while I struggled to make the most of my damaged life's page. And he was. It wasn't easy to dig back 35 years, and it caused both my husband and me additional anguish. But if he could be caught, I reasoned it was worth it. Then came the arrest. No one from my jurisdiction had the decency to let me know that Joe D'Angelo had been arrested. My 2 adult daughters found out from the news media and called me. Again, another traumatic development. Then ensued these past 2 years of realizing that victims in some jurisdictions are kept fully apprised of the developments in the case, while my experience has been deflection by my local officials, refusal to press the very charges Joe D'Angelo has now admitted to, and massive communication failures. Every contact with my local officials up to the announcement of the plea deal has been initiated by me, not an email or a phone call, unless in response to my own efforts to stay informed. For the past 2 years, I've had to advocate for myself and inform my own deputy district attorney of developments in the case that she had not been informed of. but thanks to the strong network of survivors in Sacramento, Ventura, and Contra Costa, I was. All of these things have affected my life by causing additional stress and anxiety, as I clearly saw how victims were treated differently depending on their jurisdiction. And I've had more conversations lately. It's not just San Joaquin County. It's other outlying counties too. The lack of cooperation between jurisdictions that has been mentioned by many members of law enforcement, such as Carol Daly and Detective Crompton, was real in the 1970s. And my experience is that it is still quite evident today. Don't get me wrong. I am pleased at the final resolution of this case, the guilty pleas and the admissions of guilt that are so very important to all of us survivors. But my point is that I know many of the victims personally, and we all know that some of us have not been treated equally. We can and we should do better. More wrinkles and creases that I've had to deal with. Finally, I want to discuss the absolute gut punch it was after the arrest to learn that I had been brutalized and raped by a full-time police officer. I've always had great respect for our officers and the work they do that endangers their lives every day. I've managed to continue to trust in them. To learn that D'Angelo, sworn to serve and protect, used his training and skill set to terrorize and rape and murder for years was staggering. Not only that, but this devious psychopath pursued a Bachelor of Arts degree in criminal justice, not to serve and protect others, but to enable him to be a very prolific, self-preserving criminal. He sought employment in the field where he would be least likely to be suspected. And the ultimate betrayal, he built a family structure around himself to further disguise and hide his evil, bloodthirsty, diabolical pursuits. And I feel so badly for his daughters and his granddaughter. This epiphany exposed his betrayal, not just of me, but of every single person in this room who has devoted their life to law enforcement and the legal system. He has purposely defecated on almost every single tenet and principle that normal people would hold in the highest regard. I find it so ironic that D'Angelo sits in these proceedings one after another, relying on the very professionals, the judge, the attorneys, and officers to protect and defend him that he has betrayed and disgraced. I have one final paper to share with you. This one was once a clean, crisp, blank page full of possibilities that might have benefited the world. But it's today a toxic, steaming, evil mass of human waste, best kept sealed tightly. And there's no excuse for this. So I get that he may have been an abused child, that he experienced sad things in his life, that he had to move around a lot, that his fiance jilted him. But a lot of people go through bad times and they don't decide to be serial rapists and murderers. I and many others like me were traumatized within an inch of our lives, and we did not decide to become serial rapists and murderers. For 2 years now, I've witnessed D'Angelo devolve, dissolve, and decompose through his sheer will into this seemingly puny coward before us today. During this time, he's somehow been allowed to liquidate his home and his personal assets and transfer them to his family. It's my view that instead, all of those assets should have been impounded by the state of California to defray the costs of his legal proceedings and his incarceration. He has bargained for and obtained the removal of the death penalty, though if there was ever anyone more deserving of death, I can't imagine who. I'm certain that there is method in his madness and that his plan is to weaken himself in order to be assigned his life without parole sentence in some prison nursing home for old murdering psychopaths, where he thinks he will be treated more like a patient than an inmate. It is my fervent prayer that the court and the Department of Corrections will see through his ruse and realize that he has been treated more than fairly. He deserves the fullest, longest sentencing that this court can muster, along with the recommendation that he be located as far away from his victims as possible. My wish would be that he serve his death in prison sentence within the cold walls of Pelican Bay, as far away as possible, because all of us survivors deserve the peace of knowing that D'Angelo is gone for good. We survivors can continue to try and smooth out the wrinkles in our lives. And as my fellow survivor Trish quoted recently, try to make the rest of our lives the best of our lives. We deserve that opportunity. This is opportunity that was turned into ugly choices. And when I was making this paper sculpture and I ran it through my paper shredder, doing that to Joe's life felt pretty good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sir.
My name is Robert Hardwick, and this is my beautiful wife, Gay, who I love today as much as I did when the attack took place. On March the 17th, the day of the attack, I was living with my beautiful girlfriend in a home we had just purchased months earlier. We had not yet married. I had graduated from George Law School, and I had worked about a year and a half as a public defender in San Joaquin County. I'd progressed on to, I left the public defender's office I took a job with one of the best private attorneys, small firm in Stockton, and I worked directly under Mr. Maxwell Freeman, who I consider one of the best attorneys in San Joaquin County. My wife-to-be had graduated from UOP, and she was working as marketing director. At the time, on March the 17th, before the attack, we felt like all young people want to feel, to be successful, to be productive, and to be moving forward with somebody you love. We had all those things. Then on March 18th, 1998, Joe Angelo appeared in our life. He broke into our home. He tied me up at gunpoint. He assaulted and raped Gay repeatedly. It was terrifying for me because I was totally helpless. I could do nothing to protect her. Gay was a victim of a horrible assault. And I was a victim because I would have to live for the rest of my life knowing I was helpless to prevent this attack. After attack, we would go to bed at night hoping to get a complete night's rest. However, if we heard anything in the middle of the night, we would proceed to our friend's house a few doors away where they would welcome us on their couch